Right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're up to 35 attendees right now, and we hopefully will have a few more join us as we go along. But in order to keep things prompt and on time tonight, we will open up our chat window also. No, I won't, because then that's on the screen share. Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on the first ever online activity for the League of Women Voters of Camden County, and it just so happens to be our annual meeting. Yay. For those of you not familiar with the League, we are a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and then we also work on influencing public policy through education and advocacy. We also register voters. That's one of our most exciting functions that we do, register and educate voters. So we also provide voters with nonpartisan election information through vote411.org. We conduct educational forums, candidate forums, debates, and more. And we're going to cover all that wonderful stuff in the later portion of the webinar tonight, which will be our annual business meeting. And that's going to take place after our speaker portion. And you can learn more then about how to get more involved with the League if you're interested. Before I make a couple statements, I have some housekeeping notes to make. So one of those is that you can use the chat to talk to each other. You can introduce yourself, say hello to everyone. You can also use it to chat to a specific person. So if you want to drop down a chat from the list, you can chat with a specific person. I would just ask you not to chat to me since I'm moderating and won't be reading them. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button. That is where you're going to submit questions that will go directly to Janet Fisher-Hughes, who's our second vice president. She's also a trained League moderator. And along those lines, along with League moderating policy, any questions that are not constructive will be reworded so that they are constructive, or they will be dismissed. So let's keep our questions topical and constructive, as I mentioned. Everyone is going to be muted during the speaker portion. We may unmute certain people or everyone during the business meeting portion, but for now, everyone is going to be on mute. Anything that you see shared on screen will be shared with you later on, so you don't have to take pictures of anything that you see or worry about keeping track of anything there. And also what will be shared afterwards, if there are any questions that we don't get to, we are going to compile a list of all the questions asked tonight or additional questions that come in that we may not have time for, and we'll distribute that after the fact too. So we want everyone to have feel free to ask questions throughout the whole presentation. It'll be a town hall format style where I'll ask questions back and forth with each of our speakers, and then we'll go to a Q&A period at the end after about 25 minutes or so. Before we get started, I want to make a comment that it's important for us to take a moment as the League of Women Voters of Camden County and add our chapter's voice to the chorus of voices that are speaking out against racism and police violence in the weeks since the murder of George Floyd by police in Minneapolis. Our mission of empowering voters and defending democracy isn't possible and is meaningless if we don't speak out against racism in all forms and stand firmly in the fight against systemic racism that creates and perpetuates inequality in America. We want to make sure we're listening to and amplifying Black voices and centering the conversation on race on those people who have experienced racism most acutely. We promise to address these issues more actively going forward in our league, because on a local level, our chapter recognizes that we have had shortcomings in actively addressing issues of diversity, equality, and inclusion. So we're going to work hard on that, and we invite any interested members or non-members to join us on August 26th for our membership meeting and strategic planning session. We'll talk more about it a little bit later and figure out what actions we can take and how we can move this work. We want to finally end the statement by echoing the sentiments of the State League, which said, "The League of Women Voters is committed to combating voter suppression and fighting for an inclusive and participatory democracy. But without racial and economic justice, our democracy will continue to fail too many. Black Lives Matter." So we'll now begin the speaker portion of our meeting, as I said, which will be about a half an hour of a town hall style Q&A. And we're here tonight presenting this webinar on preparing for a presidential election in a pandemic because we have found ourselves in really extraordinary circumstances in 2020 for a number of reasons. There's been a lot of change, a lot of adjustments needed, and we are going to have a presidential primary like we've never had before. And we may continue to see these effects into the general election in the fall. So we have invited two speakers from the Camden County Board of Elections to join us to walk us through the usual process and what is unusual about this year, what's different, and how we can better educate ourselves to better educate our neighbors so that we can share and spread the word. Not a lot of people, like everyone on this webinar, are out there actively seeking the nitty-gritty details of how elections function. So we want to make sure that we are taking this information and being spokespeople to the people that we talk to on a day-to-day basis. So we have Donna Robinson Taylor, who is one of the Board of Elections Commissioners, and Rich Ambrosino. And I'll let each of you just do a brief introduction of yourselves, and then I'll start in with our first question.
Sure. Thanks, Kristen, and thank you so much to the Executive Board. It is just an absolute privilege. This is my second year in a row I get invited to the annual meeting, and although I miss seeing everyone's nice faces at the restaurant, I'll take this. So thank you, because we are in the middle, like you said, of something that has never been happening before, and it has been a constant fluid motion every day. But I do want to, before we get into things, and I just give Rich the microphone for a few seconds, also let everybody know that our other commissioners, Commissioner Novella Starks-Hinson and Commissioner John Custodio, are also on the call, as are some of our staff members. So, you know, that support continues even after 4:30 when the office closes. And we're just happy to be here and continue this partnership. We thank Anita, who has been tremendous to us in helping dialogue all throughout the year. And we hope it just keeps continuing and building. And we need you just as much the next 3 weeks in getting the word out on how this is going to be happening and all the steps that have to be taken. So with that, I pass to Rich.
I mean, I can only echo what Donna said. We have, first of all, the most amazing staff. You can't imagine how hard they've been working through all this, even from home. 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, the commissioners are getting emails from our administrators, Kim Campisi and Sarah Booker, who are fantastic. So I can't say enough about them. The league has been fantastic in our relationship. The Vote 411 stuff has been great.
And congratulations on the Webby. Love it. Yes. Yes. Amazing.
You guys have been a major asset to us and make our jobs, you know, that much easier. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And thank you for inviting Donna and I and, you know, John and Novella to, you know, be a part of this in the past and this one in particular, because it really is important and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great. Well, it's wonderful to have you both. And I realize that I don't think I ever said who I am. My name is Kristen Burke. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Camden County for another year, if they'll let me be. And I'm happy to be here hosting. And in the later portion, I'll introduce some of our other board members who are also on the line. So we're going to jump right in. And last year, Donna, as you mentioned, you were our speaker at last year's meeting, and we talked about general voting, but and touched on vote by mail. Now, with the executive order and this being a primarily all vote by mail primary, would you be able to just walk us through with a refresher on voting by mail, what the process looks like? Most people who were registered Democrat or Republican have now gotten their ballot in the mail. If they haven't, they should soon. Yep. So could you just walk us through that process, and then after that we'll talk with Rich about what's really different from this year.
Sure, perfect. And if you want to put up those numbers I had given you on this will show you what was sent out. The clerk's office did share this with me, so I did double check to make sure they were accurate as of this morning. They did also let me know that all of the ballots are currently in the mail. So as you can see, there were 210,646 ballots that were sent to all active registered Democrats and then Republican, and those are the breakdowns. And again, this will be emailed to everybody. The applications themselves have also been sent out. So we've had questions in the past that was been posed to our office of people, if they're uncertain, if they don't get it by a certain time, do they call the clerk? What happens? My answer is, if you don't see things by the end of the week, the latest Monday, I would be picking up the phone and calling the clerk's office and asking for another ballot, because everything was done in the mail this morning. So the last of the ballots were sent. So just to walk through a little bit about what happens, you want me to go into the process we do from receiving and all that?
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, explaining to people how the ballot is looked at when it
Okay,
comes.
so once the application is done, a ballot is sent out, it's voted on by a voter, it's received, and Rich will go through the new steps of receiving and the different ways of that. It comes back in our office, and a lot of people think that that's just it. And quite honestly, like today, I think we got probably 10 plus trays of mail of ballots that came in. So the ballots come in, every single one of those has to be scanned, so it showed as received at our office that day. From there, you then have to go through and pull up the application so that the commissioners from that part then start doing signature verification. And they do the signature verification of the application versus the signed certificate on the vote by mail. So it is a very extensive process. You have to sort by town. We're having problems with the system of the state, even printing things in order. So there's a lot of little nicks that are happening that we're just trying to keep pace with and keep in communication with the state to make sure that that process continues. From there, those ballots are then put in a vault and sealed until Election Day. And on Election Day, we are, I believe, the only county in the state that starts at midnight. So Monday night at midnight, we hire temporary people to come in, to start breaking down, taking off the flaps so that those sealed envelopes have anonymity once they're opened and ballots are flattened, so that at 6 a.m., our machines start, the staff starts, and votes start getting tallied. That is how we have been able to keep pace in all the years past. So we sort of have a little bit of experience at a high volume, not in the levels that we're seeing with 210,000 plus that are being sent out, but we'll be continuing that for the next 7 days at least, because that's what we're ordered under the executive order. So Rich, I'll pass it from there if you want to say a little bit about the different ways they can get ballots into us.
I will. And I look at these numbers and I see 370,000 ballots and applications, and the four commissioners have to look at every one of those signatures. So I see a lot of really tired eye days in our future. But this is a whole new landscape. No one, not the state, not any of these county boards there's no test case for this. And I think the state, and I know we at the county level have done a great job of evolving through the executive orders and, the things that the governor and the legislature have said, do this, do that, and fill in holes. They've asked for, feedback from us. So I think everybody up and down the line of kind of responsibility here has done a great job. This year, differences several. As you can see from the screen, every registered Democrat and every registered Republican, you're getting a ballot whether you ask for it or not in the mail. You're getting a mail-in ballot whether you ask for it or not. This does not mean you go on the permanent list.
Right.
The law prior to this scenario was if you asked for a ballot, you would always get one for every election unless you opted out. That is not the case in this special scenario. You're just getting it, whether you want it or not. In addition, all the list you see above, unaffiliated, active, inactive Democrats, inactive Republicans, inactive, unaffiliated, will get an application asking them. Now, the reason for that is because in a normal primary, unaffiliated voters would have to get both ballots, Republican and Democrat. They have to pick the one they want to vote, which in effect declares their party, the ballot they send back. In an effort to not make county clerks have to make 2 times 157,767 ballots, this was the way the executive order was written, asking the unaffiliated and inactive voters are going to get a special application, not the usual application, that asks them to declare which ballot would you like, Republican or Democrat. They send it back, and then they're sent the ballot of their choice. So you can imagine that the expense, the time, that's why it was, the executive order was, excuse me, promulgated the way it was. The key thing, and we've talked about this, and this will help, and the league will help, I think, in this education, is if you can go to a polling place, any voter can go to a polling place, unless you have a demonstrable disability that you cannot vote on a paper ballot. You will vote on the same ballot that you would have gotten in the mail, the exact same ballot, provisionally now at the polling place. There will be a machine at every polling place with an ADA kit, because we have to prepare that if someone comes to a polling place who cannot vote on a paper ballot for whatever reason, they can use the machine. We have the ADA kit that reads the ballot to them, etc. There are various and sundry things that the ADA kit provides to those who cannot vote on paper. So that's why there's a machine there. Now, our biggest concern, I think our biggest education effort in this, and this is where the league could be very helpful, is people are going to walk into a polling place, not understand why they see a machine and can't vote on it. That education is very important. It's because of the fact that there are live ballots out there all day for Democrats and Republican active voters. There are applications coming back and forth to us, to the clerk's office, people requesting ballots. So to be judicious, you can't vote in a machine until we have all the VBMs and provisional ballots back to make sure that you've only voted once. So this happens in a normal election just in 2 days. In this election, it will happen over a greater expanse of time to allow for just the magnitude of the mail and allow the post office to process it. So these are safeguards that are put into place to make sure that the balloting is fair, there's no foul play, that every ballot we get that's legitimate and righteous, that we count, because we will. But that's, in this world, in this new landscape of just now today, and hopefully we'll never have to do this again, that's what we have to do. So if a voter goes to a poll, they won't ever be turned away, just like they aren't prior to this, this pandemic, but they will have to vote on paper, all of them, even if they see a machine there, unless they have that demonstrable, disability that they cannot vote on paper. And
Right.
That's the key educational thing. We don't want people to go to the polling places and feel like something's amiss. I see a machine, why can't I vote on that machine? We've opened the executive order would allow counties to consolidate polling places up to 50%, minimum 1 per town. We've opened almost every one.
87%. So out of 194 polling places that we typically have, when we certified everything Friday, we are at 168 polling locations. Our staff was tremendous in reaching out to municipal clerks. Ms. Hinson was tremendous in reaching out to all our sites in Camden City and making sure every single one of those stays in place, and they are. And it was a tremendous effort. So we're really proud with that number. There are going to be some quirks, but we will work through it. The municipal clerks are helping us with notification of old places versus new places. So it really was moving well. And if you want to put up the Dropbox thing too, Rich can go into that if he wants to, talk about that, the ways to get us ballots.
In addition to,
I do.
so,
Sorry. I do have one quick question. Just it was irrelevant. I know we said we would hold questions till the end, but since we had it up on screen, could you quickly define who all those inactive voters are? What that statement means?
They are voters who have not voted in 2 consecutive. Donna, you correct me if I'm.
2 consecutive federal elections.
Consecutive federal elections. So what happens is they haven't voted basically in 4 years, but 2 consecutive federals is the key. They stay on the voter rolls, but they're made inactive. If they then eventually go to the poll or request a mail-in ballot or whatnot, that re-registers from them. They're not purged from they're not purged from the voter file. They're rendered inactive. Some of them may be sample ballots that were mailed to them in past elections over the last 2 or 3 years, were returned undeliverable, or mail we sent to them, or the county clerk's office sent to them election mail was returned undeliverable, until we can verify that is the location they still live. They're made inactive until they come to the poll or request a vote by mail ballot or file a vote by mail ballot, and then they're reactivated. So they're on the list, but we flag it because there's some concern about perhaps they're have they moved?
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't they voted in 4 consecutive years? That kind of stuff. So it's just a flagging of, voters that there's some concern about maybe their address isn't right. They've moved. They've not alerted our board. They've not maybe have re-registered in their new county, but
right,
for reasons, we haven't been told. And so you see the numbers. It seems like a lot, but it's really not when you think of the grander scheme of things. There are a lot of people who don't vote in federal elections. They only vote in the off years, and so it'll catch up. But if they miss one and aren't federal voters, they're inactive because they got to vote in at least one in between.
Okay.
And then again, when they come and vote the next time, they're back on the active list. But it's generally concern over, are they still living in the town and in the home and in the election district where they're registered? And we have reason to believe maybe they're not. And so.
Okay. All right, cool.
So
and then we're gonna touch on more about signature stuff later. There are a couple questions on that, and then just a note that some of the things you're describing, this is not necessarily how every county is doing it. There are a lot of things that Camden County that are up to the county level. So when you said you were able to keep that many polling locations open, so that's that infographic I was sharing from the state. The executive order calls for at least half of polling locations have to be available.
And that's
So
if you're able
there are
to
things
meet. If you're able to meet your board workers, if some counties were having a concern of not being able to have enough board workers to cover, and I think the executive order gave a little leeway with the 50% rule. So some of them, I think most will be able to do it though.
And we made a decision as a board right on that if we have
Keep
enough
as
board
many,
workers
right,
to open every single polling place, that's what we would do. So the staff was fantastic. The commissioners agreed. We'll back into the number of polling places we can open based on the fact the board workers we have that have committed to work, that are understand, and are okay with the situation and are willing to work. We'll open. If we could have opened all of them, we would have. There are some ancillary, issues. For example, full-time, we have some polling places in fire stations where there are full-time firefighters. So these men and women are in the station 3-4 days at a time in their shift. It's half of their squad. And if voters are coming in and out and somebody gets exposed, half of that station squad has to quarantine for 2 weeks, and they're operating at half staff. So we did have some requests from some
And
of
the
those
senior centers,
senior centers.
we did not want to use.
We chose, right. We attempted to make every effort to not use those. We don't want to, we're being legitimate about it. We actually had the freedom to maybe go back into schools, which is something we've tried to end from years ago for public safety, for student safety reasons. But kids aren't in schools. We could use gyms. We need that space to space out the, tables where voters will go and mark their, their paper ballots when they come in with the privacy screens. So the staff did a fantastic job, and our board workers did a fantastic job of hanging in there. That the fact that we were able to open, as Donna said, 87, 88%. Our requirement was 50. Our desire was as close to 100 as we could get, respecting those fire districts where we understood why they asked, that, understanding that senior centers and some of the polling places are privately owned, and respecting, their wishes, and understanding that we don't want to be sending potentially, dozens and dozens of voters into the lobby of a senior center, because they're the most, at risk, obviously, we've seen during this whole pandemic. So I think the staff did Don and I love to take credit for this, but the staff did all this, and they're fantastic.
They were tremendous.
And so, the fact that we got 87% of them open just reduces confusion. Even if everybody understands, if I go to the poll, I'm voting on paper, I might as well just get my mail-in ballot or mail my ballot that I've received back. Even if 5 people go to a polling place, if we've minimized some of that confusion, that's our job.
Right. Okay, it looks like in addition to polling places, so we're sharing on screen now these Dropbox locations. So is this simply an option for people who normally in a regular election you can mail or you can bring it to the Board of Elections in Blackfoot? So
and there were concerns, there were mail concerns that we saw in the May election. So the state, rightly so, this was tremendous effort here. It came up with these drop boxes, and if you scroll up, you'll see this is the actual picture. Camden counties came today. So we are so excited. All 5 of these they'll start being put out. They were a day late. They were supposed to go out today, but they're going to start tomorrow, getting them to all of these locations. They will be continually checked. They will be continually monitored throughout days. And at 8 o'clock election night, we will have people stationed at each drop box, a Democrat and a Republican, because at 8 o'clock, just like the polls, they will get locked. So that's the only time it will be locked is 8 o'clock, July 7th, when polls close. Those drop boxes will be locked, everything collected, and back to our office. So these are going to stay in place. Because we're not sure of what's going to happen in November, they're going to stay in place. And if we need to get more, or we're not sure, once the governor decides going into the general. But for now, we were instructed that everything that we put here will be in place. They're under 24/7 video monitoring for the security of them. That was one of the stipulations of the Dropbox locations. So everything has camera contact on it. We wanted to obviously try to keep them very accessible around the county. So, we luckily had people just jump at the chance to have one in their town, which was great. So that helped us tremendous. Our office does not have one. You'll see it's in Gloucester Township instead. Our office, and Rich and I have both said this, our staff is in there working. There's no way we can continue to handle what we handle if we're not working there. So we physically are there, but we are closed to the public. Our lobby, the county has accommodated us tremendously with social distancing protocols and PPE in our lobby so that a voter can come in, they can vote, they can drop off their application, they can drop off their ballot, they can come in, get a ballot, whatever. We are there. The clerk's office election division is there, accessible through the lobby only. No one is allowed through the rest of the building for the safety of the workers. We need to ensure the elections divisions do not get any problems, obviously, in the next 4 weeks. So this is a great tool, and anyone who I would just stress to people, it is just a great tool to use. Mail is always an option. We've had continuous great relationships with the USPS in South Jersey. The regional in Belmar, John, and I don't remember his last name, has been tremendous over the years to us. And the good thing about Camden County, having had such a huge volume, is we have continued a process with him over the last 4 and 5 years of saying, look, you're not postmarking things, or you're putting them over an emblem and we can't make out what the postmark date is. That's something we learned from Superstorm Sandy. And we went to them then and said, we can't read the postmark. So they started working with us on making sure things are postmarked, making sure we can clearly see them, because they know that's how we have things counted. So, but the drop boxes will be definitely emptied daily. We'll probably be monitoring in the first couple of days of how often a day they will be emptied. So that is, but yes, absolutely daily. So that's just one of the questions I just saw pop up there.
And if I can jump in, there's also, from a security perspective, they're locked. So there's the outside box you see the picture of. There's also a container on the inside that are sealed with the numbered seals, like we use on a provisional ballot bags. If you're a board worker, you know, you seal your provisional ballot bag. So every day, one Republican, one Democrat from our staff, and probably the commissioners will be pressed into
we'll probably be in that rotation.
Well, we'll empty it. So you take the inner box out, you put an empty inner box in with a new seal, you record the seal that's on the box you're removing, plus the one in the box you're leaving, bring it back to the office. Second set of eyes, verify that the seal is not broken and it is the seal that was originally placed on that box when it was first deployed there. And then we, go through our process in that
full chain of custody with the ballots, which is what we need and what we want.
Right, exactly. And you can see they're very visible. We tried to put them in places around the county that provide access, equally to folks all over the county, places that are easy, places that, as Donna said, must have 24-hour video surveillance, that are well lit, that have the ability for voters to walk up to or park at and drop their ballot in. It's just yet another way to take some pressure off the post office, allay people's fears that maybe they've read things that the post office was in North Jersey, maybe they had some issues. Donna, I can't say it enough. She's 100% right. We are lucky down here that our contacts at Belmar, at the regional center in Belmar, have been fantastic. These are guys who will bring ballots to us on election day.
5 to 8 at night. Yep.
At 8 o'clock at night, their work day ended at whatever, 5 or 6 o'clock. They will go back and make sure every ballot that is in that building is in a tray, and they bring it to us. These guys are fantastic. So we're lucky and blessed to have that relationship. On top of the fact that we have the great staff we have, and we've had this experience where we've always had to process a very large amount of ballots. So I'm bragging a little bit here, but I think we're much more prepared than perhaps any other county in the state for what's going to happen, because you saw those numbers in that prior screen. We're going to get 160, 170,000 ballots, and we're going to have 2 weeks to process them. So, and we'll do it. We'll get it done because that's what we do. So
all right, great.
It'll be a little different, but bear with us. It'll be done right. And
exactly. Well, we said adaptation is the name of the game in 2020.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
For everything.
When you mentioned, trust in the mail and having the drop boxes as an outlet for that, I myself posted a video before the executive order came down and everyone was going to be sent a ballot. We posted a video on our Facebook page for the league about how to apply for vote by mail, and we received some comments back about lack of faith in the system and vote by mail being kind of rife for fraud. This tends to be a recurring theme. And Rich, one thing we wanted to bring up, so you also serve another role as the chair of the Camden County Republican Committee. And we observed on the Facebook page for that group some similar stories being shared, kind of casting doubt on the security of a vote by mail election And we just wanted to have you comment on how you reconcile these two roles. So your position on the Board of Elections, where it's your job to ensure the security and validity of the election and to have the public have faith in that, and then your role on that the Republican committee, whether or not it's actually you making the post, you're an administrator on there, but how do you reconcile those two and reassure the public of your commitment to the security in a fair election? Sorry, I have a toddler here with me now.
No, and I appreciate the question, because it is, I was a commissioner before I was a chairman. I think I've said I like being the former much more than I like the latter. These are probably RNC and perhaps Trump campaign and other Facebook sites that we have linked to, so their posts flow into the Camden County Republican Organization Facebook page. I couldn't disagree more. Perhaps I'm more enlightened than a lot of those Republicans at whatever level that are posting some of that stuff up. We've had to police it a little bit and take things down because there's no reason for anyone to not have faith in the validity and the security of a ballot that they mark by their own hands. It is, in fact, this is my belief, the safest way anyone can vote. Now, you can't hack our machines. They're never plugged into the internet. We've had these conversations. There's tremendous myths. They don't count paper ballots. I can tell you, Donna and I and John Custodio and Novella Hinson are going to look at 160,000 signatures between now and July 14th. So trust me, we check every single one of them. We do the job we need to do. I don't agree. I can't, and I'm more than happy to disagree with the president on this one. When he says he feels like there's greater potential for fraud by a hand-marked ballot than on a machine of any kind, even though the fraud possibility, even on those machines, is remote. The former is even more remote. I don't agree. So sometimes we have to go in and we see these things that flow in, and sometimes we'll take them down, try to catch them as we can. This is obviously, given the world we're in now, many states, not just New Jersey, are moving to a more mail-in, vote-by-mail, type of election for public safety reasons, public health reasons. And I don't have a problem with it. Support it entirely. We try to weed through that.
And quite honestly, Rich is probably going to be with me doing a public service announcement throughout the county, trying to get the word out about the validity of this, yes, not as his chairman role, but obviously as his role as a commissioner.
Our preference would be that we educate people. If you don't feel like if you're going to the poll, you're going to be able to vote on a machine. This is a different thing, a different animal now. You're going to get handed a paper ballot, whether even if you're in the voter rolls, even if you're not stamped VBM voter, like right.
And they're both secure, very secure functions. They are all counted. They are all, everything is tallied. Provisionals themselves, when they're given, if a polling place is given, say, 50 provisionals, there is a tally sheet that all of the board workers have to go through and say, and it's sealed. And then if they cut that seal, they have to say, here's how many I used, or here's how many. They count envelopes, they count ballots, and then it comes back to us. We go through the count again. So it is constantly ensured that we have counts and counts of everything, and it stays accurate. And it's time consuming. That's why results are not instantaneously, and they're not going to be for this election for sure. So
that was one of our important questions, because we know generally provisional ballots, as you said, in a given election, you'll have the counts start coming in from the poll locations. Right. You'll have the counts coming in from vote by mail ballot counting, and then you know those results in real time, and then you know how many provisional ballots have been issued and whether or not. So sometimes you're able to call an election before provisional ballots. They all are
And
But
that's not
before-
going to happen this year at all.
So that's the question. How long do you think it will take?
Okay, so
Because-
let me go a little bit about what's going to happen, and this might piggyback a little bit in some of the questions on the current lawsuit that's going on. So right now, election day, 8 p.m., things shut down. Typically in a year that of not this year, of not 2020, if our board was not done counting everything we have received up till that day, we have to go before a judge. The Attorney General is our lawyer. We go before a judge and we say we need a court order to continue counting the next day. This typically happens in a presidential primary and in a presidential general election because we get a lot, right? So we're one of the few offices that go to about midnight of election night. But now, under the EO, we don't have to do that. We can stop at after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever we want. That's up to the board. We stop and then continue the next day. So even if we haven't finished everything we've received by 8 o'clock election night, we're going to continue the next day. So the counts going on the website, which will be clearly marked in huge red letters, will say this count is ongoing and continuing from July 7th through July 14th for vote by mail, because that's when we have, under the EO, we have to accept everything postmarked by July 7th, but received up to July 14th, right? We cannot, under Title 19, we are not allowed to start opening and canvassing provisional ballot counts until we are done with vote by mail. Because this safeguards that if somebody went into the machine, that we haven't received something in the mail. So if you start those on day 2 after election day, but then the provisionals, but then we're allowed to take vote by mail up to 7 days later, somebody could be voting twice and you're not going to catch it at that point. So one of the things that came up on a phone call last week with the State Division of Elections was the lawsuit with the League of Women Voters and the NAACP, and about curing signatures, which I think is about time, because I have wanted to have this on a website where people can go in and see, you know, commissioners already don't want to, you know, already don't like your signature and you have time to correct it. So that's sort of what the lawsuit is saying, right? That while we look at every ballot to every application, what happens in our office is we'll get the application. If it doesn't match, it goes in a box.
And you mean the application, sorry.
Of the vote by mail, of the vote by mail application, yes.
In this case, since a lot of people, you know, they automatically got it.
It'll be a voter roll. It'll be the photo of their voter roll signature. Yeah. So then if they don't match, what we do is go back in the system and keep comparing any signature we have for John Doe. If it's 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, we are trying to give every single ounce of leniency that we can to this voter to not disenfranchise them by signature comparison, which is why when you saw the article for the amount of ballots that we receive, we have a predominantly low number of rejected signature. In our board, we have a board compromise that we have that if Rich and I are sitting together, we always have a D and an R sitting together doing this comparison. If we don't like it, it then goes in a pile and Ms. Hinson and John Custodio will look at it. All 4 commissioners' eyes have to be on something that we don't like for signatures. If there is a tie, if it's come to 2 people like it and 2 people don't, we have to go before a judge. That has never happened in my 17 years of doing it. It's never even come up. So, but it is there for us, and then a judge would decide. In this case, what my understanding is from the state, and again, we don't have full information on it, but they're working on the affidavit that we would be notifying that voter saying, hey, you either forgot to sign it, so it's missing, or your signature is not matching with what we have in the rolls. Fill out this affidavit, you sign this affidavit, you get it back to our office within a certain time frame, and then we accept that, and that becomes now your signature scan. Yeah. So they're working out timing, because we have to work it into that provisional thing and then certify all by the 24th of July. So I think they're working through the kinks of that, but
yeah, because to backfill that story a little bit, what happens now is that someone can mail in their ballot. they'll receive a note back from the clerk's office, or from that it was received into the office. You get a notice that your ballot was received, which other counties don't do, but
we do. Yep. But it is you do have to put publicly on a website. I think it's all linked through Division of Elections. There is a status for all vote by mail ballots. I don't know if they're doing that for this election. I would imagine they are.
Yeah, I believe it's the law that they have to, and you have to request a password for it.
Correct. Exactly. And the way we've been told about the executive order, if it wasn't addressed in the executive order, then the Title 19 stands. So I would imagine that would still be happening because it wasn't addressed.
Yeah, and we've got folks that we know that keep an eye on that to make sure that they're staying good on keeping them posted.
Right, but you don't get, if your signature didn't match, you wouldn't get, we do send notices to everybody in our county who we have rejected their ballot and why. We don't have to, but we do, but it's after, exactly. So now they're getting this notice saying, oh my God, what are you kidding me? Clearly, if it's a senior, if it's a shaky handwriting, if it's not like, oh, it has to identically match. One of the other things that the state brought up, which we love because we've been trying to look for a training on this, is that the state is talking about training the commissioners on it. We've had actually trying to look through the FBI for classes, trying to look through where the four of us can sit and actually go through this, covering up and looking for a slant. And it is mind-blowing the amount of time we spend on it, but you have to. This is somebody's vote. This is their right, and we don't want to disenfranchise them. So I'm happy that this is moving forward, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing how they're going to help us help the voter from not get disenfranchised. So,
and if I can expand on that for 1 second, Donna's 100% right. I believe, and don't quote me on this, we asked the staff to pull these numbers, but they were swamped today with all the 12 trays of ballots we got. But I believe, my recollection is, in last year's general election, we got
34,012 ballots.
We disqualified, I believe, 68 total ballots on signature match. That's all.
I don't remember the amount. Yeah.
It may not even be that high. It's certainly no higher than that. So just so people get a sense of, positivity, that's our job. Isn't to disqualify. Our job is to just verify and move on. So we're probably one of the lowest counties in the state in signature match disqualifications. There are several hundred ballots that under the law currently, if you don't sign it, it's automatically disqualified.
Right.
What Donna has referenced now is a cure that the governor's executive order created that hopefully will continue to exist moving forward in a coronavirus world, where we have the legal authority to cure that ill, to contact the voter and say, you did not sign your ballot, and in some way allow them 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever the statute or whatever the legislature decides, to cure that just a mistake, forgot to sign it. Hundreds of them we have to disqualify under the law because there is no signatures, and we had no cure prior to now. So like Donna said, we're very happy that now we have
and it's usually, that number is usually double, if not maybe sometimes 3 times the amount of those that are rejected on signature. It is that high.
Yes.
It is that high, and it's completely unfortunate, and I'm glad they're finally fixing it.
Yep. Yeah, that's 100% true.
And so it would be great if we could include in our follow-up documentation some of those numbers. And I know we had looked them up for a previous, I know I had looked them up once and it's available in the election results, but the percentage and knowing which ones are rejected because of signature mismatch and versus missing signature or some other kind
and there are several other categories. I mean, there are categories where they don't put a ballot in. There are categories where they take the certification off and don't even return it. There's a whole realm of people who
mark their ballot, and so we could I have a great handout I think for that we could adapt and put into it to explain some of those other reasons about why a ballot could be rejected. we're going to get soon in a minute into our Q&A portion, but I did want to, more of like a pie in the sky type question. So right now you start counting the ballots. So election day is July 7th. You start at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday, right?
Start opening.
No, opening. We can't count until the polls open at 6 a.m.
Right, but
Yeah.
sorry, so you start opening, so they come in and you're doing the signature match, then you're detaching the signature sheet from
At 12 o'clock midnight is when everything gets detached, so that there's just an envelope that's sealed with nothing, no identifier to it. So the people we're hiring to open them and flatten the ballots and get them ready to scan have no idea whose ballot it is. That's the anonymity of it. So it's completely separated away from this envelope.
Okay, so one thing that and this again, like a pie in the sky thing, maybe, but other states there are, and I forget the number right now, but there are other states where, like Colorado, where it's an all vote by, every election is all vote by mail, where they have procedures by which they start with ballot counting prior to election day, which on its face sounds horrifying, you know, when you want to talk about security, election security, or you know, security, keeping those things kind of secret, so it doesn't influence other votes. But they have policies and procedures in place for that. Is anything like that being discussed in New Jersey on any level that you're aware?
There was a bill that Senator Beach had put in at the end of last year, which the way it was written, we were completely against, because it did not ensure any of those penalties, any protection, any guidelines that they would need to put in place to say, if you do start canvassing early, which in effect is, you know, I mean, you're entrusting people's votes to the people that work in the elections offices. So, you know, we hated it and a group had come to our meeting and brought that to our attention. Hated it from the go. We did get on the phone with Senator Beach and let him know after that meeting that it was a horrendous bill. He did pull it. But we said if that is ever brought to fruition again, we were familiar that there are other states that have very strict protocols in place and penalties under law that if any of that information gets out or is disclosed, you are punishable to. And that's a different story, because that's when people would take a second breath and think about it, because the last thing you want, like, you know, to stem off the thing, everybody in that office is either a Democrat or a Republican. We are nominated through county parties, the state party chairs, and appointed by the governor. So it's not like there's not political people in the office. So the last thing anybody needs is that kind of taint on an office if certain guidelines and strict penalties aren't put in place. And they were not when it came to that bill. So I would imagine that there's going to be talk of that, of early voting. I don't know. Honestly, we usually do a recap after elections with the clerk's office and then go to Senator Beach and say, you know what, can you help us do this and this? And he tends to have more of an understanding because he served as a clerk. So he tends to be very helpful to us in trying to disseminate this information to other, you know, legislative members and whatnot. So, but I haven't heard, honestly, haven't heard anything since then.
Okay. And then the reason, just while we're talking about the counting and when things are opened, so your goal, you have a week now, but I'm assuming the goal is still to try to finish as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So one of the things at the end of the segment, I know you're going to put up our flyer that we do, you know, we're constantly looking for board workers. We're constantly looking for what we call the vote by mail openers. That's the midnight shift. We did extend the days that we're going to be doing the opening. So we're doing an opening at midnight for election day, but we also voted on doing opening on the Wednesday after and the Thursday. So the 8th and the 9th from 8:30 to 4:30, we're hiring for those shifts as well. So because we're still going to have quite a few amount of ballots that need to be opened and, you know, flattened, the ballots get flattened all through. And plus stuff that's coming in still has to get processed. So it's very difficult to take the staff away and have them do it. So we're gonna err on the side of caution that we need this. And we planned for it, we're gonna budget for it. And that's, you know, so that those shifts are available as well, which is not on the flyer because we literally just decided it.
Okay, great. Well, we have gotten some questions. I think we've addressed those questions that are in the queue here. Janet's monitoring that again. So if folks could, if you wanna
I think one thing is, as far as there seems to be a little confusion about like the signature match. I get the impression in terms of like, what are you're matching obviously the signature on the envelope that comes in from the ballot,
Right.
and against what is it?
Okay, so people that have applied for a vote by mail, when they come in on a normal election, we have an application from somebody and we have the certification that they sign on the envelope, right? That's what we compare it to. It technically, according to Title 19, you have to look at the rolls, how they've signed a poll book before when they registered. A lot of problems with the signature matches also stem from the motor voter law, because motor vehicles, when they sign that little box with the, and it's on that pad, their signatures are horrible to read when we get them at the office. So it becomes very difficult to try to do a comparison, which is something we did say to the state, during the whole lawsuit and the curing and everything, that they need to clean up the motor vehicles section of those signatures. But so technically we are to look at the voter rolls. When they come in the application, 9 times out of 10, the application's already been checked from the clerk. So we're sort of doing the triple check of it, but then going back to the rolls to make sure everything matches. Cases like this, that every registered D and every registered R is out there, they might not have ever applied for a vote by mail, because this is a whole new election, a whole new state mandated. So we then will print out from the voter rolls what their signature is and compare it to that. And that's what we'll go by.
We'll do their most
I hope
recent.
that clears it up.
Comparison to their most recent, but also Donna, I think, touched on it earlier. We'll go back and pull every signature that we have on file in the statewide voter registration system, even if it goes back 12 years, in an effort
to find a signature that matches. Yeah.
Voters get older. I broke my arm. I broke my right arm. I'm right-handed. Now I got to sign a ballot this year. My signature is not going to match the signature on file. There are certain things. So we go above and beyond trying to find one letter, 1 or 2 aspects in that signature that we can identify and say comfortably, the 4 commissioners can say comfortably, yeah, that's that voter. This was not, there's no fraud here. The ballot went to where it was supposed to go. It came back from where it was supposed to come from. The signature matches, we will count it. Like I said, statistically, we almost never turn down a ballot on a signature match. And when we do, we send a letter saying that we did, with the registration form, voter registration form, asking those voters, update your signature. So next time we get a mail-in ballot from you, we have your latest signature.
Right.
They may have not.
We do try to make every effort. Anybody that is rejected, like we say, we do inform the voter so that they are aware and don't repeat it next time. One of the categories, like I said, is that they tear off the cert and don't even return it, which under Title 19, we cannot accept it because there's no certification with a signature. So, we do send them that letter saying, it does need to be attached, it does need to be signed, so they know not to make the mistake next time.
Right.
I did want to, just clarify on one of the things with the ballot counting. We're talking about the midnight shift. That is not midnight on Tuesday, election day. That is midnight Monday night, which starts election day. So we start exactly at 12 o'clock when we are permitted by law to start breaking down these ballots and getting them ready for the count at 6 a.m. So I just wanted to clarify that because I did note that it was a question.
And let me say too, if there's other questions that you get after Donna and I sign off, as we discussed, send them to the Board of Elections, to our staff, to Sarah and Kim, the administrators, and we'll be more than happy to answer them and send those answers to you so you can disseminate that to your members and anybody who, on your website. if we can't do it here now tonight because we were not sure of the exact answer or we're running out of time, that doesn't mean that there's not
Right.
questions that can't be answered. So
Yeah.
compile them.
Just give us a
Send
few
them on
days
in.
though, because we're getting in a lot of ballots, so it might take a few days to get the answers together.
Yeah. But we will provide them. We will.
Absolutely.
I did just share up on screen again the infographic that I shared at the beginning, which I think answers a question that just came in. Sorry, Janet, I'm stepping on your toes, but talks about unaffiliated voters will get a vote by mail application, and then they will get their ballot upon return, the appropriate ballot upon return of that application.
Right. The application will ask them, are you registering as a Democrat or Republican? Just like you would if you were going into the machine to vote, they would say, are you going in as a Republican or a Democrat, so they know which voting authority to give you. It's the same premise. They're just trying to cut down sending a Democrat and Republican ballot together in the mail because the printing was so excessive for this election. So that's why they're asking it on the application for this one election.
And this is an application that is specific to this one election. It's not the one that you've seen on all the clerks' websites and the state website. This is specific only to this election. It does not have the box that says I want to get a ballot for every election. This is one designed by the Secretary of State and provided to the county clerks. This is the application you have to use in this extraordinary instance. So it's different. That's another kind of educational thing. Even though people will get it in the mail who should be getting it, they need to not be, in this case, try to be proactive and go to the clerk's website, download the application that's there now and use that one, because I'm not sure it contains the ability for them.
They all have the right links up now. Yeah, they all have the appropriate ones up now. Yeah.
We were worried that maybe there would be confusion because for this one moment in time, we're using a slightly different application. So it's important that I'm quite sure Don is right that the clerks and the state have gotten the
I know our clerk does.
Individual application for this election, up, but just to make sure. And if anybody has any questions, you can call us at the board. You can call the county clerk's office. Believe me, not afraid to answer questions. Take those calls, please. Don't assume anything. Call if you have a single question or doubt in your mind about this. It's a different world this year. We're all figuring it out together, but I think we're figuring it out and moving in the right direction for sure.
And Kristen, I do want to just remind everybody, tomorrow is the deadline for registration. Tomorrow is the deadline. Our office is open late tomorrow night. We're open till 9 o'clock. Kim, if that's wrong, ping my phone, but I think it's 9 o'clock.
This is for not registering as a party, or what the deadline for new registrations to vote.
New registrations, nothing that's already been sent out. Right. So anyone new who'd like to vote this July 7th, tomorrow is the deadline. Oh, she said 9 p.m. is correct. Thank goodness. Yeah, thanks. I asked earlier and I just wanted to double check. So I do want to remind everybody of that because, again, I know a lot of your members are in the community and letting people know that tomorrow is the deadline for that.
And is that also the deadline? So if you were switching parties?
Yeah, no, that was passed.
Okay, that's passed. Okay.
If you are unaffiliated, you can declare a party via your vote by mail application.
Okay.
But you cannot switch. If you are a registered Democrat today, you cannot change to be a registered Republican in time to vote in this primary and vice versa.
Okay.
So that deadline passed.
That was May 13th. I just looked it up. Yeah, that was 55 days prior. Yeah.
That's a function of our staff being able to keep up with it in the registration process so that the poll books reflect the vote will at the poll on primary election day. So just so people understand, that deadline's pushed a little further out because of the time lag of us having to get it and enter it into the statewide voter registration system, and then subsequently, right before the actual day of the election, print the poll books accurately. So when you show up at a polling place, if you've changed from Republican to Democrat, you're a Democrat in the poll book when you get there. So it's just a function of giving the staff the time to do the, the inter-office things that need to be done to reflect your request as a voter.
Okay. Okay. Just a couple of follow-up questions that weren't necessarily covered. One person asked, we're talking about ballot boxes earlier. What happens if the ballot box comes back with some evidence of tampering?
Well, that's one of the requirements of using the ballot box with the state, that they had to be under 24/7 surveillance. So
Okay.
video surveillance. So if we find any kind of, you might have read in North Jersey, there were a few of the local races that they were bundled ballots, anything like that, any tampering when the staff gets there. That's so that we can then go to the legal authorities, go to the prosecutor, go to the attorney general. They will then take it from there for the legal ramifications of going back and viewing the tape and moving forward with an investigation. So that is going to cover that part as well.
Okay.
And we'll likely be told by those, the AG or the prosecutor to impound those ballots and do nothing with them until, they can see the evidence and render a decision on whether count them or not, do the signature verifications, or we believe they're all harvested and fraudulent. So, and I believe in North Jersey, in several towns where like Donna referenced, you saw that's what they did. The boards rightfully impounded, just held onto those ballots, kept them separate, did nothing in terms of their internal processing, and waited for the legal guidance about how to treat them as a group or even individually. So again, Donna said, the mandate in the EO is you have to put a box somewhere where it's under 24-hour surveillance. So if we find 400, ballots wrapped up in envelopes like they did in North Halden up there, we know that's a flag. We go back because we're going to empty the boxes every day. So we know what happened between that empty and this empty, and we can look at that film and try to identify, and then also ask the appropriate legal authorities, whether it be the prosecutor or the attorney general's office, how do we treat these ballots in terms
They
of
will
process?
guide us as our attorney. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned this earlier on, but approximately how many ballots are rejected because of the missing signature on the envelope?
So we were trying to look up that information for the last election, but we ran out of time at the office today because so much that came in. But, the one article that was referenced when the lawsuit was put in for the signature cures was referenced in 2018. We had this is the general election in 2018, we had 41,726 ballots received. Of the 376 rejected, 86 of those were on signature. Last election, general, we had 34,012 ballots received. 333 ballots were rejected. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head that were just signature, but I think it was pretty low, because I can remember saying to Richard, I was surprised. I thought it was less than 20. He's thinking
I thought it was
but we will get that. If you can include that in the questions you sent us, we're happy to get that information together.
Yeah, both signature match and missing signature all together.
Right, so those are two different things. On the missing signature, we have prior to this year, there was no cure. We have to reject them out of turn. We do.
Yeah, we don't even see them.
We don't even see them. The staff just take them out and impound them in that way. We send those voters a letter saying your ballot was rejected because you didn't sign your certification, and send some instructions like, in the future, this is what you have to do. But very few of the ones we disqualify are actually on the match. And I will say this, just as a quick aside, and Donna and I have talked about this, the other commissioners too. My signature, and I apologize because my dad's phone is ringing. I'm at my father's office. My signature when I was 18 is not my signature today. So we see a lot of these millennials that their signatures don't seem to match well anymore. So we try not to reject them, but at the same time send them a request for them to update their signature. It's always these millennial, late 20-somethings. And
all right, he's up on millennials here.
Right. No one on this call whose signature when they were 18 is the same.
I showed my sister my social security card from when I was young, and it's all that bubbly writing. Like, It would
Yeah.
never match now. It would never.
Well, I think
Right.
I think there's good messaging there, and I try to let my friends know, because I've heard friends who, admitted to, oh yeah, I filled out my ballot, and I think my husband just signed him and put him in the mail, and I'm like, that's
We can completely tell, because especially if we
Oh,
get
yeah.
the husbands, the best is
They
when you have the
match.
husband and the wife, and the husband's matches the wife's signature and vice versa, and you can tell
Yeah.
somebody else signed the ballot. It is very clear.
I think there's an education opportunity
Yes.
there as well, to
And-
make sure people understand it's not just signing it for fun. That is how it is matched. So
Yeah, it's not, and
Absolutely.
it's not an attempt at fraud. It's just it's
it's
easy.
not,
We're not messing around. It's okay,
Yeah.
but it's not okay.
it's just not knowing how the process works. So that's
Right.
important,
Right.
and we'll make sure we continue to
Thank you.
remind everyone of that as much as we can. Janet, are there any more questions? I see that one of our attendees, Winnie, has raised her hand in the attendee list. Winnie, if you're able to ask your question in the chat window or in the Q&A window, please do. But otherwise, we could probably unmute you. But Janet, are there any other questions that have come in?
Yeah, just one question. This person might want to work at the Board of Elections, because they were asking, since you do have additional time to be, opening and counting the ballots, why start at midnight on election day, and why not wait until 8 a.m.?
We have to have something to count at 6
But
a.m.
again, right, exactly. We do it to start early so that we keep pace with everything. And in the years past, that was the only way we could keep pace. And our office is so incredible that the next day they would stay late. The next day they would stay late, and we would be done and certified, and other counties weren't even on their provisionals yet. So, and we get 4 times the amount of ballots. So, again, it is all to keep pace for everything. And so that at 6 o'clock in the morning, as the boards are opening, as the polls are opening, that we can start running those machines and getting the votes tallied as quickly and as accurately.
Right. If we waited until 8:30 a.m. on election day, we wouldn't have.
We would never
ballot
finish.
open to run.
In years past, we never would have finished. It would have been a mess. One of the things I did just see, Anita's question popped up. This is a great point. Anyone in a household, you want to make sure that you're keeping your certification, your ballot inside your envelope with your certification all nice and sealed. You just don't mix them up, because that happens as well. Like, we've had the outside thing is from the husband, but the wife was the only one who applied in the past. This, election again is a little different. So just try to be mindful of, if there's more people in your household, of keeping your things in place.
And just two other questions. One for you is the vote by mail process. Will that be in place for the general election as well?
We don't know. So we're going along, like I said, every week, like weekly, we've been the Division of Elections tries to have calls with us about everything. Since we're in uncharted territory and we're not sure what's going to happen, we were instructed with these drop boxes to make sure they stay in place, because again, they're going to be bolted in the ground. These are not, you can't pick them up and walk away with them. They're going to be in place for November in case we need them, but we've been given no direction on, and I think the governor, rightly so, is going to want to see how everything goes July 7th and the certification and all that, and how smoothly everything goes. And where we are in the pandemic. I think that's going to matter as well, with social distancing and whatnot.
Right. And this is a question for Kristen. Is this presentation going to be available to be seen later?
Yes, yeah, and I did just throw an answer to that in the chat also. We are recording, and assuming no technical issues, the recording will be posted later, and we'll make sure everyone who pre-registered gets an alert. So don't worry if you have to go, because I think we're going to wrap up the speaker portion and move into the annual meeting. And I would love for those of you who are listening, even if you're not a member, to stick around. The business part doesn't take too long. You'll hear a couple of votes, but then we'll get to tell you about what the league is working on and how you can get involved. So it's open to anyone who wants to stay on. I believe our speakers are going to hop off though